everybody, and welcome back to the King Fox channel. My name is Matt Conager, and I'm building a Kitfox Series 7 STI. I've been lying to you guys this whole time, calling it a Model 7 STI, and I was on the website the other day and I noticed it says Series 7. So I'm going to start with Series 7 STI from this point forward. Here's a little clip of us flying down low over the ice, someplace east of Aberdeen, South Dakota, on the way to visit my uncle. So this next clip you're going to see is going to be a conglomerate of some of the previous videos, 41, 42, and 44 and 45, where I'm installing the gear. So it's pretty much videos over 4 days. So if you think you've seen this stuff before, you probably have if you've watched those videos. So I'm starting by getting everything ready, pulling down some of the gear that I'm going to need. Basically the big tires, followed by the rims and the brakes, and then I'm pulling the powder coated parts that are needed for the gear legs, grab the axles, get that stuff unpackaged, and get it all prepared and ready to go on the airplane. I spent a lot of time at the bench here looking through the manual, trying to get everything ready to go, lined up, bolts and nuts and washers ready. Get the seat pan out of there. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in that back corner because that's where I had my other workbench set up, and I was doing a lot of the filing on the legs, running the Dremel tool, because back there by my tool chest is where the closest outlet for me to hook up the Dremel tool and do that work, and then I would do some fitting. And here I'm one-man show, so I'm jacking up the airplane a little bit into the front, a little bit into the back, a little bit more into the front, a little bit more into the back. And then it gets to the point where I actually run out of wood to stick under the fuselage, so I put a sawhorse together and stuck it up on there. Now it's got a very narrow stance. It's no Larry Craig. Some of you might get that reference, but it was pretty tippy at this point, so I had to get had a 2x4 in the top of that sawhorse, so I got it up there, and I could drill some screws down through the mounting holes for the legs into that to keep it pretty much attached to that sawhorse and a little bit more stable. Again, looking through the manual, making sure I've got all the right parts ready to go. And a lot of this, I'm going to be reaming parts as I go along. And again, if you want to go back and watch those previous videos that I mentioned where I'm installing the gear, you'll see this stuff in finer detail. But I just wanted to give you guys an overall example of moving around the shop and kind of what's entailed. This did take me about 4 days, so that gives you an idea. Somebody could probably do it faster. I could do it faster now that I've done it once, but locating everything and getting all the parts ready to go is kind of a feat in itself. I will say that my new workbench that I can raise and lower has been a godsend, really, because that other one I was having to bend over all the time and get down and look at the manual, and I spend a lot of time standing at that desk, and it's a little bit easier to just stand up straight than be bent over that other desk that I was using before. And this thing's a lot more stable, and I can wheel it around. Pretty helpful. I believe I'm reaming all the parts for the gear leg attachments at this point. Doing some more reaming, quite a bit of reaming actually. Looks like it's evening time, probably time to go to bed, but I'm burning the midnight oil here because I wanted to get that gear on. Attaching the parts that I just reamed to get them bolted to the airframe so that I can mount the gear on. And that stool I'm sitting on too has been pretty helpful. And it gets you at the right level for working on the fuselage. Allows me to scoot around the shop a little bit. It's got pretty good sized wheels on it, so it goes through the pock holes I've got in the floor quite well. I think I was fielding a phone call here, that's why I got the headphones on. Now I'm getting the main gear legs down, and I had to do quite a bit of filing on them to get them to fit in between the bushings on the fuselage. Unwrapping them, everything that comes from the Kitfox factory is wrapped extremely well, so I'll probably have enough saran wrap in the house to cover cakes and pies for the foreseeable future. I've been hanging on to all that extra foam and stuff that they're wrapped in because I find it useful from time to time to basically put it in between other surfaces as I'm manipulating parts around in the airplane as a protective layer. I'm back there filing on the gear legs and then test fitting them and filing and test fitting and filing. Looks like the dawn of a new day. I'm doing some final sanding on this gear leg. I may be fielding a call here from Brandon. I had a few questions, and I called and got a hold of him, and we chatted for a little bit, and then I continued moving on. Filing and test fitting the gear leg, filing a little bit on the fuselage. Filing on the gear leg wasn't providing any results, so I had to do a little filing on the fuselage. Test fitting the gear into place. Looks like I'm finally putting some bolts in, getting those things tightened up. After I get this side of the gear on, I'll put the other side on and then start to put the monster shocks, which you can see sitting on top of the big ass tires there. Checking the bolts on the bottom end of the monster shocks, making sure everything fit through nicely. And as I was starting to put the first monster shock on, it fit into the bottom just fine, but up at the top, it didn't want to go into the cabane, so I was reluctant to just run a reamer through there, so I quickly called the monster shock factory. Nobody answered, so I left a message, and no sooner than I could get back down on my stool and start to manipulate things, I got another call back. The gentleman told me that I could just run a reamer through there, which I did, and that quickly solved the issue. The reamer went through quite nicely, I do remember, and I was able to push that bolt right through and get that installed and then do the same thing to the other side. I'm tightening up the axles onto the bottom of the gear legs, tightening up the cabane attachment. And I haven't had any oil leaking out of the monster shocks yet. Some people have said that after they put the monster shocks on the airplane, they had some oil leaks coming out of there, but I have yet to notice any. I'm getting ready to level the airplane because the manual says you need to level it to get your shims in to do the camber on the axles. So I wasn't totally sure on how high I should go with it and which part needed to be leveled, if it was the fuselage itself longitudinally or if it needed to be leveled about the lateral axis. But once again, I called Brandon, and he said basically they like to get it into a state that's not a wheel landing, but more between a wheel landing and a 3-point landing or a full stall landing. So you'll see here that I'm going to lower it down, and then I'm going to begin to do those, begin to set the camber on the axles, except for I couldn't find my shims to do that. So that's one of the items that I have pending yet in my book. I need to locate those shims and find out where they are so I can put that 4-degree camber on the axles. So I'll be lowering it down here shortly. My buddy Daryl called. He's a certified A&P mechanic, knows what he's doing. Also a pilot. He has all the tools required for the job, so he's nice enough to bring those over and help me swage in these rotor cables. He's going to bring over the Knipex cutters and the actual swaging tool and the calipers we need to use to test to make sure our swages are proper on the NicoPress. So I appreciate him coming over to help doing this. I actually did swage a cable once with him on my maul. When I was selling it, I had to put in new rotor cables, and I did the crimping work, and he did the testing and making sure that I was crimping in the right areas on the NicoPresses and making sure that all the crimps met the specific criteria. Halfway between a wheel landing and a 3-point landing, I think we wanted the tail wheel about 18 inches off the floor. I'm unwinding the rudder cables, laying them out, and since I had a loop, basically I ran them. I kept the loop in the back because I didn't have my cutters yet, so I ran them left and right side up through the appropriate bushings, put in my NicoPresses and my shrink wrap, and then ran them up to the front of the airplane. And then when my friend came over, we made them equidistant, and then we cut the cable in the back of the airplane to make it into two, and then give us enough room to run the co-pilot side back from the front. Because when you run your first run of rudder cables from the back, left and right side, it's a home run from the back of the airplane straight up to the pilot side, and then whatever you have left over is going to run from the front to the back on the co-pilot side and get swaged over to the pilot's cables. You'll see an example of that in one of the previous videos where I was swaging the rudder cables.
Y contestaremos su llamada tan pronto como sea posible.
And for some reason, I don't have a time-lapse of me actually putting the wheels on the airplane. That might have been another day, and I either ran out of battery or just forgot. But from this point, all I did was put the rims together after I cleaned out the bearings and repacked them, put the rims inside the tires, put the tires on the airplane along with the brake, and I'll put a picture of that up here at the end of this time-lapse. So thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already done so, hit that like button, the subscribe button, and the little bell for future notifications. And I'll see you guys on the next video. Have a great day. In the event any of you are interested in buying a Tesla, I have a link here on the page and I'll put it down below. You'll receive $500 off a Model 3 or a Model Y to include 3 months of full self-driving. You can receive $1,000 off a Model S or X to include the 3 months of full self-driving. It appears that they also have some deals on solar panels and the solar roofs. So again, I've thrown the link in here. I'll put it down below. In the event you guys are sitting on the fence just waiting to pull the trigger, it's here to take advantage of for either $500 or an extra $1,000 off. We'll see you guys on the next video. Bye-bye.